I was going about my business as a student, taking classes in Morehouse and Spelman, as you could do in the Atlanta University Center, and at a class or two at Clark Atlanta, which was Clark College at the time, and trying to date girls at Spelman, like you're supposed to do, and generally stay out of trouble, until those guys over in Greensboro decided to do that sit-in thing, and this fellow, Lonnie King, had a bright idea that we ought to be doing something like that here, and encountered me on campus and invited me to a meeting with a small group, and we talked about it, maybe 24 or so of us, and began planning our own movement, and that was in February of 1960. The word got back to the college presidents about what we were planning to do. They were, of course, encouraging us not to do that. That's not what we were sent here for by our parents. But when they were persuaded that we were going to do what we had planned to do, they recommended that we at least let it be known to the public why we were doing what we were doing. And that led to the writing and publication of a document called An Appeal for Human Rights, which was written by Rosalind Pope. But following the publication of that document, we had sit-ins in about 10 or 11 locations at the same time at 11 o'clock on the morning of March 15th. We had subsequent demonstrations and a year-long boycott of the downtown businesses, targeting mostly on the store Rich's Department Store, which was everybody's favorite. Everybody, was intent on shopping at Rich's as their number one choice. So we made them our number one target. And throughout our boycott, we picketed and sat in and that sort of thing for a good period of a year. So we were able to get the theaters desegregated. We took on hospitals where doctors could not practice, black doctors could not practice. Blacks and whites were strictly segregated in the facility. You had black and white ambulances. There were, I think, 6 white ambulances, 2 black ambulances, and if the 2 black ambulances were not available and you got hit by a car, you had to wait until a black ambulance was available. We were arrested, and as I recall, I think that was that first arrest that led us out to the city farm. We were convicted, of course, and sentenced to 10 days at the city farm on Key Road, or some such thing. I haven't been there since. I had no desire to revisit the place. Squalid conditions. We were roused every morning at about 4:30 and were required to go out and chop weeds from around collard greens growing in the field. And the girls stayed and peeled potatoes. We were out there for, I think, about 4 days before the public uproar was such that the politicians intervened and got us out of jail. We also had a major voter registration campaign that summer that registered, I'm told, some 20,000 new black voters, which made the difference in the election of the mayor of that year, who was Ivan Allen. Ivan Allen at the time had been president of the Chamber of Commerce, and he was one of 6 candidates running for office. One of his chief rivals was Lester Maddox, who was our local arch racist in town, and we ended up with a runoff between Lester Maddox and Ivan Allen. But the students and the black power structure were divided on the candidates that they supported. And the students had enough sway at the time that they were able to deliver like 15,000 votes to their candidate, which Ivan Allen needed in the runoff. And he had an attitude that blacks had no choice. Of course, they would vote for him in the runoff. And I took the position that we had a third option. And he asked what that was. I said we could go fishing, in which case you lose. And I got him to commit to publicly pledge to desegregate all city facilities, increase employment of blacks, increase promotional opportunities for blacks and that sort of thing, that if he would do that publicly, we would ask black folk to go back to the polls, and we knew how they would vote based on that. He did, we did, he won. It was during this period that somebody decided that Dr. King, who was back in town now, should teach at Morehouse College. It was partly, I think, to give him a little income, because, civil rights didn't pay that well. But he was put on the faculty at Morehouse College to teach one class, and the class was called A Seminar in Modern Social Philosophy. And there were only 8 students in the class, and I was one of those 8 students. His mission was to help us to contextualize our efforts, our movement, in the broader context of history, philosophically, where that stood in the total scheme of things. It was clear that Dr. King believed, as he often said, that the end is inherent in the means, that you cannot achieve nonviolent ends through violent means. Nonviolence does not mean that you're scared or that you are complacent or that you're willing to take anything. It means that you're going to confront the powers that be to try to right the wrongs that you see. If you're not mad as hell about something, you ain't paying attention. And it doesn't matter what issue it is that you choose to be passionate about for the greater good. You ought to be passionate about something. It could be education, it could be the economy, it could be the environment, it could be equal justice for males and females, whatever. Get passionate about something, because this is the world you got to live in. Your children got to live in. And if you just sit idly by and wait for things to get better, they won't.